The story always begins the same way, with a glance that lasted a second too long and a silence that felt louder than dialogue. No one announced them as legendary, not at first. They arrived quietly into the public eye, stitched together by coincidence, timing, and a chemistry that refused to behave. What made them unforgettable was not perfection, but inevitability, the sense that once they stood side by side, something in the atmosphere shifted and never fully settled again. Years of past faces have changed, new couples have risen and fallen like seasonal storms, yet no one has replaced this couple, and the reason lives not in headlines but in memory. They did not love loudly at first. Their bond unfolded in fragments and behind-the-scenes laughter and interviews, where answers overlapped in moments where one reached instinctively for the other, without realizing the camera was watching. It felt unscripted because it was. Every shared look carried history before history had time to form. Viewers sensed it immediately, the way one senses thunder before rain. This was not just romance played for the screen, this was resonance, something deeper, something that refused to be replicated no matter how many times producers tried to recreate the formula. There was a scene once one fan still replay in their minds, even when the clip itself has faded from circulation. They stood close enough that their shoulders almost touched, not quite leaning and yet already connected. The world around them blurred, lights softened, voices dimmed, and for a brief moment, it felt as though the rest of the room did not exist. That moment was never meant to be iconic, but it became sacred because it was real. No choreography could recreate it, no script could demand it, and no replacement could inherit it. What followed was a wave of attention, praise, speculation, admiration, and pressure that arrived without warning. They handled it differently, but together. Where one retreated into silence, the other offered calm. Where one hesitated, the other waited. They never rushed each other, and that patience became part of their language. Fans noticed how they moved in sync, not rehearsed, but aware, always aware. It was not about grand gestures, but about presence, about showing up in the same emotional space, even when standing apart. Time tested them, as it tests everything worth remembering. Projects ended, schedules shifted, rumors circled like vultures waiting for weakness. Still, what they shared did not dissolve. Even in absence, it lingered. New pairings appeared on screen, promoted, heavily polished, carefully designed to ignite the same spark. Yet something was missing every time. The new couple smiled, beautifully posed, perfectly, and faded quickly. They were echoes without origins, performances without gravity. Viewers watched and felt entertained, but not changed. The irreplaceable quality of this couple lies in a way they made people feel seen. Watching them was not an escape, but a recognition. Their connection mirrored something familiar, something fragile and honest. It reminded audiences of first love, of timing that feels cruel and kind at once, of bonds that do not need constant proof. They carried vulnerability without advertising it and strength without declaring it. That balance is rare and once experienced impossible to forget. There was an interview where they were asked what made working together special. Neither answered immediately. They exchanged a glance, one brief and unguarded, and in that silence the answer lived. When one finally spoke, it was not poetic or dramatic, just simple words about comfort and trust. The clip ended there, but the pause before the answer became legendary. It told a fuller story than any explanation could. That pause is why no one has replaced them, because you cannot manufacture the space where truth settles naturally. Even now, years later, fans trace patterns backward, connecting dots that seemed insignificant at the time. A smile held too long, a shared joke, repeated across interviews, a habit of turning toward each other before addressing anyone else. These details form a map of intimacy that was never announced, yet always present. Replacement couples lack this history. They start fresh, and freshness can be exciting, but it cannot compete with depth earned over time. The industry moves quickly, always chasing the next sensation, the next pairing, the next spark that promises virality. But virality burns fast and leaves little warmth behind. This couple did not explode, they simmered. Their story unfolded slowly, allowing audiences to grow alongside them, to invest emotionally without being rushed. That shared growth created loyalty, not just admiration. People did not just watch them, they carried them. There was a farewell moment, not dramatic, not final, just quiet. They stood apart this time, a little distance between them, yet something invisible still connected the space. No tears, no declarations, just a mutual understanding that some chapters end without closing the book. Fans felt it immediately, the ache of something unfinished yet complete. That paradox is what keeps them unmatched. They did not need closure to remain unforgettable. Attempts to replace them misunderstand the nature of what made them special. It was never about looks or popularity or even romance alone. It was about timing, about two people meeting at a crossroads and choosing to walk the same path for a while without knowing how long it would last. That authenticity cannot be scheduled, cannot be cast, cannot be repeated on command. Even in separate interviews, now their names still surface together unintentionally. A question about growth, a mention of a past project, a smile that appears unexpectedly. They never feed the nostalgia, yet they never erase it either. That restraint deepens the legend. They allow the memory to breathe without exploiting it, and in doing so, preserve its integrity. New couples may shine brighter, initially may trend faster, may dominate timelines, but they rarely linger. This couple lingers. In edits, fan compilations, whispered conversations, late at night, among those who remember how it felt the first time. Their story has become a reference point, a standard, not because it was perfect, but because it was sincere. No one has replaced this couple, because replacement implies vacancy, and what they left behind was not empty. It was full of meaning, of moments that still resonate, of emotions that still echo. You cannot replace something that continues to exist in collective memory. You can only add new stories alongside it, never over it. In the end, their legacy is not about whether they stayed together on screen or beyond. It is about the space they carve into the hearts of those who watched. A space that remains untouched, not because no one tried, but because some connections are singular. They happen once, change you quietly, and leave behind a blueprint that others admire but cannot replicate. That is why when people speak of them, their voices soften. That is why their scenes still feel alive. That is why even now, no matter how many new faces appear, no one has replaced this couple, and perhaps no one ever will. The memory does not fade, it evolves, growing sharper in the quiet moments when nostalgia is least expected. People scroll past new faces, new pairings, new promises, and still find themselves pausing when an old clip resurfaces, when a familiar laugh echoes through tinny speakers, when a look once shared flashes briefly on the screen. It is never planned, it simply happens like a reflex, like the heart recognizing something it once knew well. That is the power this couple holds, even now, long after the cameras stopped framing them together. There was a time when their presence rewrote the rhythm of every scene. Conversations slowed when they entered the frame together, as if the world instinctively gave them space. Even silence felt intentional, charged with meaning. Other actors moved around them like satellites aware of the gravity, but unable to enter its center. It was not dominance, it was harmony, of balance, so natural it felt accidental yet undeniable. Viewers did not need dialogue to understand what was happening. They felt it in the pauses, the half smiles, the unspoken reassurance that passed between them like a secret language. One behind-the-scenes moment remains etched into collective memory, though few can pinpoint exactly where it came from. They were waiting between takes, leaning against opposite walls, tired, unguarded human. Without looking, one reached out, and the other responded immediately, fingers brushing briefly before retreating, as if startled by their own instinct. It lasted less than a second, yet it told a story years long. That moment never aired, never trended, never needed to. It lived on because it was real, and real things have a way of surviving without permission. As time moved forward, the distance between them grew in public view, yet the connection never felt broken, only transformed. When asked about
Even
past
in silence,
projects, they spoke carefully,
Zukai spoke
respectfully,
volumes.
never diminishing what had been shared.
The moments the cameras
That
refused to
restraint
capture
spoke
were not
louder than
mistakes or
declarations
slips.
ever could.
They were
They did not
revelations
rewrite
and
history
brief
to
as
fit
lightning,
new narratives, nor
yet leaving
did they
scorch
cling
marks
to
on
it for
memory.
relevance. They
There
allowed
was a
it to
morning
exist
show
as it
interview,
was
one of
in
those
perfect,
hyper-polished
unfinished,
segments where laughter was
unforgettable.
canned and
That
questions
maturity
rehearsed.
deepened the
The
respect
host asked
audiences
about his
already
career
held,
trajectory, the
and
roles
made the
he had
memory
chosen, the
even more
characters
resilient.
he had lived through. Shukai
New
answered with
partnerships were
precision, charm, and
introduced with
polish, but
enthusiasm,
then
with
almost
carefully
inaudibly, he
curated
whispered
chemistry,
something about
with
fear.
strategic interviews
Not fear of
designed to
failure,
spark
not the cliche
comparisons.
that interviews love
Yet
to
every
frame,
comparison
but the
ended the
quiet
same
fear
way.
of losing oneself
Something
in
was
a world
missing.
that expects only
Not skill,
what
not
sells.
beauty, not effort,
A microphone
but
snagged on a
ease.
cord.
The ease
The
that
crew
comes only
flinched.
when two people stop
The director
performing
muttered a soft
and start
cut.
existing together.
When it
That
aired, his
cannot be
sentence
taught,
vanished,
it cannot
replaced
be
by the
rehearsed,
innocuous.
it cannot be forced.
I am grateful for
It
my
arrives
fans.
quietly
It
or
was
not
safer,
at all.
Yes,
Fans notice
but it
how
robbed
even in
viewers of a
separate
truth that
projects
glimmered in
echoes
the pause
appear.
before the cut.
A familiar gesture,
Those
a
who had been
tone
in
of
the
voice, a
studio
way
said
of
it was as
listening
if
that
time
felt
had
borrowed
slowed,
from shared
as if
history.
everyone had
These were
collectively
not
held their
signs
breath
of
for a
longing,
second too long,
but of influence.
listening to a
When
fear
two
that was
people
not meant to
shape
be
each other
public
creatively,
yet,
emotionally,
somehow
personally,
demanded
traces
acknowledgement.
remain.
One late
Those
night
traces
interview is
became
still
part of
whispered
why
about
no
among
one else felt
insiders,
quite
a
right
segment that
afterward.
never made it to YouTube.
The standard had shifted quietly and
Zukai sat
irrevocably.
under the soft glow
There was a
of
particular
studio
scene
lights,
often discussed where
shoulders
emotion
hunched
peaked
slightly,
not
hands
through
loosely
dramatic
clasped,
confession,
as if
but through
guarding something
restraint.
invisible.
They stood facing each
The
other,
host
words
leaned
hovering,
in, probing
unsaid
gently
eyes
about personal
heavy with
growth,
understanding.
the
The
evolution
camera
from one
lingered,
role to
unsure
another.
when it cut,
He answered
because
calmly,
nothing was
speaking of
happening, yet
dedication and
everything was
technique,
happening.
but then
That
in a
scene
voice
still
lower than the
circulates,
microphone's
not
range.
because of
He
what was
confessed
said,
to moments
but
of
because of
overwhelming
what was
doubt.
felt. It captured
Sometimes
the
I
essence
feel
of their
like
connection, the
I
willingness
am not
to stay
acting
in the
at all.
moment without
He said,
rushing to
sometimes I
resolve
feel
it.
like I am just
As
surviving
years
someone
passed,
else's
the narrative around
expectations.
them grew
The
softer, more
pause that
reflective.
followed
It was no
deafening.
longer about what could have been,
The camera
but about
operator,
what was
thinking Sukai had
experienced.
finished,
Fans stopped
zoomed in
asking for
closer,
reunions and
capturing
started
every
honoring the
subtle
story
twitch of
as
his lips,
complete in its own
every
way.
shift of his gaze.
That shift marked a rare
It was
kind of
intimate,
closure,
almost
one
too
not
intimate.
granted by confirmation,
In
but by
post-production,
acceptance.
the editors
And
excised
still
it
the reverence
entirely,
remained.
concerned
The
that
industry
viewers would
continued its
misinterpret
cycle,
exhaustion
as
for
it
weakness.
always does. New
What
stars
remained on
rose, new
screen
couples
was a
formed,
smooth,
new trends
polished
dominated
Zukai.
conversations.
The vulnerability
Yet whenever discussions
buried,
turned
hidden beneath a
authenticity,
veneer of effortless
whenever chemistry
charm.
became the benchmark,
Yet
their
for those
names
who were
surfaced
there, who had
naturally
felt the
not
tremor,
as
in
nostalgia
his
bait,
words,
but as reference
that brief
points.
confession had
They had
resonated
become
like
a
an
quiet
echo in a
standard
canyon,
against
small,
which others were
fleeting,
measured not
impossible to
competitively,
forget.
but contemplatively.
Then there were
What
the
truly
variety
set them
shows,
apart
moments
is
of
that their
chaos,
story never
where the
relied
cameras
on
were meant to catch
spectacle.
laughter
There were
and
no
lighthearted
grand
antics.
reveals, no public declarations,
Zukai
no
played
dramatic
along, a master of
unravelings.
timing and
It
charm.
was subtle, layered humor.
Yet
It
sometimes the
unfolded
masks
in glances
slipped.
and patience, in mutual
During a round of a
respect.
game that required
That subtlety allowed
confessions,
audiences to
he
project
hesitated,
their own
eyes
experiences
distant,
onto
lips
it,
barely
making the
parting.
connection feel
It's
personal
funny,
rather than
he said
performative.
quietly,
Everyone
how people
saw
cheer for
something
you,
of themselves
but do not
reflected
see
back,
you.
and that reflection
How
remains
applause can
even
feel
as
like
the
a
original
wall.
image recedes.
The producer
There's
froze.
also something powerful
The assistant director
in the way they let
flinched.
go. Not
Cameras
with
kept
bitterness,
rolling,
not with
capturing
denial,
only his
but with grace. They allowed change without erasure, growth without betrayal. That balance is rare, and it left an impression deeper than permanence ever could. It taught audiences that some connections matter not because they last forever, but because they change you forever. Even now, when clips resurface, there is a hush that follows comments slow, hearts pause, words soften. People do not argue about facts, they share feelings. They remember where they were when they first watched the scene, how it made them feel, what it reminded them of. That emotional anchoring is why no one has replaced this couple. Replacements offer novelty, but not memory, and memory is the truest currency of connection. In private moment away from screens, it is easy to imagine they carry the story lightly tucked away not as a burden, but as a quiet chapter that shaped who they became. There is peace in that imagination, a sense that what mattered was honored even without preservation. That sense transfers to those who watched, making the story feel safe, intact, untouchable. The reason no one has replaced them is simple yet profound. They did not occupy a role. They created a moment. Moments cannot be recast. They can only be remembered. And this moment continues to live, breathe, and resonate because it was built on truth, not design. It existed because two people met and connected without knowing how deeply it would echo. So when viewers say no one has replaced this couple, they are not resisting change. They are acknowledging impact. They are recognizing that some stories do not ask to be continued. They ask to be remembered. And this one remains vivid not because it was flawless, but because it was honest. That honesty lingers in the spaces between scenes and the collective sigh. When an old clip appears in the quiet recognition that follows, it lingers because it mattered and because it still does. That is why even now, amid countless new stories, this one stands apart, untouched, unrushed, irreplaceable.